Hey everybody, welcome back to our movie review. Hope you guys been enjoying the content channel as of late. Just been keeping up, just been doing the daily content grind. Just hoping to keep it up. If not, it might be just because of life or other reasons. But back to another review, and I just got done watching this not too long ago, and I have my thoughts. So that film that we're going to be discussing today is Steve, which was directed by Tim Malance. I believe that's how you say his name. Who we previously talked about on this channel with a film called Small Things Like These, which I really enjoyed, which also starred Cillian Murphy. This is him reuniting with Cillian Murphy, and this is based off of a 2023 novella entitled Shy, which is quite illustrative as we actually explain the synopsis to the film. You'll see how interesting that title of the book is. Written by Max Porter, who also is the author of the book that the movie is based on. Stars Cillian Murphy once again, as well as Emily Watson, who also previously co-starred in Small Things Like These. So, bit of a reunion of familiar faces and familiar creatives. This tells a story of a reform school and a collection of boys who are very, very troubled, all of which are dealing with very different, are very familiar forms of aggression. You know, all of them are embroiled in this just very toxic manner, and some of which have exerted their toxicity in very specific ways, some of which have inflicted harm on people in very violent, sporadic behaviors, other of which have performed very heinous crimes, like we're talking sexual assault, amongst other things. And this reform school is there to hopefully shape these kids up and to provide them with more healthier behaviors rather than just sending them off to prison, which would be probably where they would end up. And as the film is titled, we follow Steve, who is the boss of said school. That person is played by Cillian Murphy, and we follow through his perspective as well as through a couple of the kids, the dealings of their emotional states and the very stressful and bleak and quite frankly hostile environment that takes place within this little school that they are trying to maintain and trying to salvage as other things surrounding them start to fall apart, as it were. So with this craftsman, or with this creatives back in the forefront again, Tim Malantes, Cillian Murphy, and Emily Watson, all of which I thought did very well in Small Things Like These. I was very, very curious to see how this would shape, and coming out of it, I am a bit rattled, to be frank, and rattled in a positive way because. As I illustrated up top about this being quite a stressful environment, in that all these kids are just very, very just like always on, as Cillian Murphy's character describes at one point, one of the kids, these kids are always on. They're never ever just at low energy or in a very calm state. They're always hyperactive. They're always at each other's throats. Very violent tendencies, and the film exerts this in quite an anxiety-inducing craftsmanship that I feel is properly illustrative of just that environment itself, because it doesn't feel like it's being played up for dramatic effect or being felt up in a certain cinematic language. It just comes across in a very, albeit specific, but very authentic, showcase. And I feel that also extends to the performances as well. I think Cillian Murphy again just brings out such a very, very solid turn here. And in terms of just the overall, the overall film itself, I think it's quite a stark contrast to what the previous endeavor was with Small Things Like These, where with Small Things Like These, it operated on a great level of subtlety and a great level of calmness. But within that, there was this eeriness, and there was this almost this fear that is being cut, within that subtlety. With this, it is quite the opposite of that. It is quite explosive and it is quite expressive, and in that you get something that is just, almost just breathing that of just anxiety itself. And it flirts within, it's kind of a documentarian type of approach, both in literal and technical formats, because because the film takes place within a day specifically, and on this day, coincidentally, there's a documentary crew that comes to observe the kids, and as the film also operates within that mentality, we also have a documentary crew there simultaneously to both have a literal and technical format to that specific showcase, that specific framework, through documentarian language. But above all else, I think that it has an interesting point to make within the chaos. An interesting point about resilience. The temptation to give in to to give up in the face of hopelessness, because it is also a very bleak film, because it's not a film that I think ends on a really hopeful note. It does exert that, but it ultimately kind of exerts that idea within the knowledge that there is only doom to be brought at the end. It is not it is a sense of tragedy almost, not in the sense of uplifting, but a sense of tragedy that is met at the end. And I won't spoil, ultimately how things work, but I do think the film does have a small issue in that there is these collection of kids, but I do believe that some of these kids are sidelined in favor to prop up others. There's a kid named Shy, as the novella was titled, and we do see the similarities, between him and our central character, and how both are dealing with their own emotions, both in very different, reasonings, but in some ways very similar fashions, and embroiled again within this very stressful and hostile environment. So it is small in scale, but I think that it surely leaves a lot to feel, and in that I think that there is something very noteworthy within it, and you get very interesting performances. I think Cillian Murphy just very, very well just highlights and just exerts this idea of anxiety, the way that he talks and just repeats himself, and he's just stuttering. The mannerisms within that performance, I think, are just very, very authentic in how someone would, in fact, deal with anxiety itself, and also just essentially kind of dealing with a kindergarten, classroom, except if the kids in that kindergarten classroom were just incredibly, violent. Like just the mental anguish that is taking place within that performance is very, very apparent. So it has very solid performances. I think the craftsmanship is, like I said, very illustrative. It just all feels very well integrated to highlight what is a very harsh and very just crazed environment to live in. And I think that there's a point to be made within the chaos, and I think that point is both realistic, but also, but in some odd fashion, hopeful at the same time, even though it is met with tragedy. So it has an interesting point to be made, and I think that in that you also have great technicality, great performances to supply it, and generally just an anxiety, just a film enraged, just fueled by anxiety. And thankfully, though, there is a point to the chaos, and not just a exercise in anxiety itself. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Steve. I thought it was good. I thought it was a solid piece, mainly propped up by its craftsmanship and those performances. It just has an authenticity to it that I'm really happy that it's there. And hopefully this is not the last of this collaboration between this filmmaker and Cillian Murphy. I would love to see more from these two in the future. But you guys, what are your thoughts on Steve? If you guys have seen it, it is on Netflix now. So let me know your thoughts if you guys have seen it, your guys' thoughts on small things like these as well, if you guys are familiar with that film, and your guys' thoughts on this specific collaboration, because I would love to see more work from these two in the future. But let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.